call her
I'm
Addie
being
Bell.
peaceful,
I
loving.
call her Addie
I'm
Bell
all
about 10
love
minutes
and
ago.
light right now, so I was not being violent.
But unconscious copy.
That is called making up stories in your head. You did call me Addie Bell, which we're gonna chat later about.
I was like, she's gonna flip me
No,
off.
I do not like to be called. There is only one person who can call me Addie Bell, and it's our friend Crystal. She's the only one who can get away with it. You get
So
beat.
Crystal can
call me Addie Bell, but everybody else gets beat.
I just talked to Crystal this morning too. It's like I'll tell her you're privileged. You're the
Yeah.
one that can call her Addie Bell. So
Anyway. And that is a boundary. I have a boundary around my name.
And you know, because we know a lot of the same people, I have seen your name in multiple people's phones. I'm not selling anybody out here, but you're Addie Bell in a lot of
Am
people's
I
phones.
Addie is like so like childish to me. I'm like, oh, like, oh, I could take Addison. Addison's mature and sexy and
Not playful.
I'm very playful.
So Addie is a boundary.
Addie is a boundary in my world. It's a very, very loose boundary, and it's almost a playful boundary. But it is a boundary, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. Is if I joke around it, it doesn't bother me that much. If somebody consistently called me that, and it wasn't in a playful way, I would actually set a boundary and go, I'm sorry. Like if I had a client who called me Addie all the time, I would be like, I'm sorry, I need to set a boundary. My name is my name is Addison. You know, you can call me Queen, you can call me Addison, but you can't call me.
Well, I go by my middle name.
Yeah.
My closest friends and family call me Renee.
Yeah, and I could go by a family name with close family and friends too. And so yeah, there are boundaries. Like certain people can call you Renee, and certain people cannot.
Yeah, it's just like I go, what?
Yeah.
Who are you to call me? Who are you to call me Renee? What? No, that's reserved for us. And I don't make a big deal out of other names being used unless it gets to be something more.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa.
Unless you need to set a boundary, and I think that in and of itself, and names, I think for both of us are kind of, it's like a very loose boundary. It's like, okay, like, but I think it's a good point in that sometimes like something isn't a boundary until it is a boundary. And then it's like, okay, this wasn't a boundary, and now I have to create a boundary around this particular thing because it has gone too far.
Yeah, and that can get pushed by anybody. So my birth name was Brenda. I'm just coming out. I'm coming out. My birth name on my birth certificate, which has since been changed, was Brenda. And she, as you know, you probably know where I'm going. You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So it's Brenda Renee. And when I was 12, I changed it. I changed it at 12. Well, I don't hate the name Brenda. I hate the name Brenda for me.
For you, it doesn't fit you.
Hate the name Brenda for me. Like it causes me just saying it, I feel tension rising up in my back, and I'm just like, I want to punch something, and I have like great frustration and anger toward that name being called Brenda. And I'm like, I legally changed that. Like that is not my name. I disowned. I was never Brenda. I was like, no, I've always gone by Renee. It's always felt it's more me than anything. It's just so I've always gone by my middle name for the most part. And my children think that it is such a hoot to say, hey, Brenda, to the point that, like I have a 5-year-old this next weekend, a 5 and almost 7-year-old, and the older siblings of them have taught them, mom's name, her birth name was Brenda. So when they want to push my buttons, we're driving down the road, and I mean, here I am on the way to Tahoe.
I've seen
a 23-hour drive, and I have a 4 and 6-year-old in the backseat going, Brenda, can we stop? Brenda, can we stop? And I'm just wanting to like run into the back of the semi because it's like, stop.
You want to blow up.
I want to blow up. because my boundary, something that really sets a negative energy inside of me, is getting pushed and disrespected to a level. Now they're 4 and 6, so I do make the, hey, you're 4, you're 6. But if I just kept my mouth shut, which I don't, I'm like, mommy doesn't like that. I don't like to be called that. That's not mommy's name. Call mommy. Number one, I'm mom to you. I'm mom, mommy, Mandra, whatever the heck they're calling me for other versions. I'm like, but if you want to use a name, here's your options, right? So you can use mommy's middle name, first name, whatever you want there. But Brenda is not okay. And they, of course, laugh it off and do what they're going to do.
But they're 4 and 6.
But they're 4 and 6.
And you're teaching them.
And I'm teaching them. So I'm teaching them, hey, I'm going to speak my truth around my boundary. And you're not making, like, you're actually doing something that I really dislike in this moment that doesn't resonate with me. That really is like, this is something that I'm asking repeatedly to please be followed. And if our boundaries get pushed at that level and disrespected, and we're speaking it, and we're trying to show it, because we don't just speak it from our voice.
Our actions.
It's our actions. Our actions speak probably more than our voice does, no matter what.
Yes.
No matter what. And then what ends up happening?
We blow up, which you just did a
I just did, which was all on because I
But you came and I was like, yes, let's talk more about that, because that resonates with me today.
Right. And it's just like you blow up. And why are you blowing up? I mean, I talked a little bit about this on Conscious Coffee, but we blow up because we're trying to regain control. Trying to regain control. So, yeah, but you're the one who brought up the topic of boundaries.
Yeah,
so
I think.
What's on your mind about boundaries?
Well, I think we're kind of right on topic, where I think people get upset when you've crossed their boundaries, but sometimes we don't speak our boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a couple clients right now that are like, well, people just walk all over me, walk all over my boundaries. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not sharing your boundaries. And if you're not sharing your boundaries, if you're not verbalizing to those in your life, they can't just magically go, oh, this person, really struggles when I cancel on them consistently, or this person's they don't know their boundaries, they don't know where they're walking, so they really are walking through a minefield. And then at the other end of that, I think there also is this, we are speaking our boundaries a lot, and are you paying attention, and do you give a damn enough to
so many people say that they care,
pay
attention,
attention,
they want to make the other person happy, they only have the best intent in mind, and they just plow right over somebody's boundaries. And even though the person's going, stop, like this, in all these different ways, they just bulldoze. They continuously bulldoze. And that right there is another form of control, because we're trying to manipulate and control somebody else's actions and what they're doing and how they feel and all this different stuff by ignoring their truth.
Yeah, and so it is do you care enough to pay attention to that other person's boundaries and hear that other person's boundaries? Because sometimes we're speaking our boundaries, but people aren't hearing it. People in our life aren't hearing it. And I think this is there's so many levels to this, because I was actually thinking about this today and the past few days, because the term boundaries just keeps coming up. The last few weeks, actually, since January 1st, I think boundaries has been just an intense topic.
Yeah, it has.
It really, it's just been this intense topic.
I'm seeing all these people over the first couple weeks of the new year, they were talking about boundaries and goals and everything. And now, the reason I did blow up this morning was because now I'm seeing the effect of their boundaries not getting met or them not speaking. And now it's just massive, just catastrophic blow ups going on. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Well,
yeah.
That's what happens when.
Which I think you're right. Yeah. You're seeing catastrophic blow ups. I see them in my clients and just people in my world. And I think I was saying there's many layers to this piece, because I think I was driving today and I was like, well, there's the people not listening to our boundaries, but then there's also this level of us being human, because we're always we all trample over each other's boundaries. We do. We all trample over each other's boundaries, but there's also a level of being human that we need to understand that when we set a boundary, sometimes it's no, that person didn't mean to just cross that boundary. It's You're not always going to be the top of somebody's mental list.
Yeah, you don't get to be everybody's priority.
Yeah, so if somebody set a boundary or has like shared something with you, sometimes we fall over things just because we're so much in our own self. We are just being selfish and self-focused in that moment, and it's not a purposeful. And I think sometimes I think we can over-personalize a boundary and go, oh, see, they don't care, they stepped over it once. And sometimes it's a boundary that just needs to be trained.
It's hilarious.
Back in.
I was just texting with somebody, and they're sending me threads of conversation between them and their partner. And the statement made by one partner was, you see, I just don't matter. Because they felt that their partner had trampled over a direct boundary. Mm-hmm. And the initial statement was, you see, once again, I just don't matter. And then I'm getting, that because I'm the between person. Right? They're both like that, and they're bickering and fighting over text and everything. And one's like, I just don't understand why they feel that they just don't matter. They're my highest and most priority. I love them so much. Mm-hmm. Blah 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 blah. And the other one's going, they just don't get it. Da 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 da. They're just trampling over me over and over again. And this is where we aren't conscious. Yeah. We're not conscious to what the repetitive nature is that we have. We can get so stuck in, and I mean, I think that in this particular case, but it is a very common thing, is that, one person will get stuck in their mind around work and around money and around responsibilities and everything. And they think that they're doing all of that for the other person, for the family, for their mate, for, all these great reasons. But what they're not realizing is that in that focus of doing it for them, they are also running over their families, and they're not seeing them, they're not hearing them, they're not, connecting. Yeah, I see that a lot with all the couples that I work with.
Yeah, I agree. It's massive. Just rolling over people's boundaries, but also personalizing it. But then there also is, it is personal. When we are in deeper relationships, it is personal, and it does hurt our feelings, and it does create this emotion, and it does create this, I don't care, this other person doesn't care about me, things like that. And so I think it is such a complex topic, and we are always messing it up. We're always messing it up. I think it's recognizing when you have stepped over a boundary, when you go, oh, maybe that's what they were talking about. And it comes back to, I think, the communication, because I think sometimes we set boundaries and the other person might not quite understand what those boundaries. So if somebody says, I'm trying to come up with one on the fly of time. Let's say time, because time is a huge boundary for a lot of people. Time is a great boundary. So it's well, I need more time. Well, what does that actually look like? Because I think sometimes it's well, is that you don't want me to communicate with you? Is that you need this period of time? You need this, and I see this with moms and stuff a lot of times, and I've got one or two women that I'm working with right now that are struggling with this. They're well, I just need more time. Well, what does that look like in reality? And that's where it comes to communication. Okay, well, what does that time look like? What does, your husband taking up some of this space that you need, what does that look like? What do you need him to do? What do you need to do? Where's your responsibility in taking the time? Things like that. I have one client specifically who's kind of coming to mind, and she's like, I just need you to help with the kid. I just need you to help with the kid so I can go to my yoga class and take this time for me, and I can go and do the food shopping that I need to go do. And these are some of our bigger issues. And it's okay, yeah, but have you communicated that? Have you said, I need from 4 to 6 o'clock on Wednesday, this is a boundary, this is a me time, this is a whatever. Have you communicated that? And so I think I had a point to that, and now I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah, communicating, what that means, because I think sometimes we throw out these very broad boundaries, and we all do it. Well, what does that look like? I think sometimes boundaries need a constant communication because also they're ever fluctuating. Because a boundary for one person is not the same boundary for another person in our lives. So
no, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I see, and I'm guilty. I mean, and that's the thing. We're all guilty of not having great boundaries, and then all of a sudden we go into this mode of I'm gonna get set my boundaries in place, and it comes out so harsh.
Yeah.
And then because we have been so flexible with our boundaries, so soft with them, and not stating our truth, that when we start to learn how to communicate, we go
edge.
Yeah. And I consistently, like we taught the Tantra Reboot this weekend. We talked a lot about the pendulum of life and the pendulum of energy and how we ebb and we flow, and there's always this ebbing and flowing. Well, if we've been really, really soft on our boundaries, and then all of a sudden, what do? We go way over here,
and then everyone else goes
rigid, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with that person? Like, what? If they, like, are you okay? They're having a mental breakdown. They're having, like, what is going on? And then it's like, oh my goodness." And if we do that repeatedly in that aspect, because we'll become really soft again, right? And then we become soft, and then we go back and forth. I remember as a kid, my father, it was like walking on eggshells with him a lot growing up, because he would be over here in the soft land for like 11 out of 12 months. He was over here in the soft month, and then April would roll around, and it was tax month. And tax month made him go way over here. And I remember as a child, from my earliest memories, I probably have like a negative vibe for April in general, just because of his mode of being in April. And it just got programmed into me. Like, actually, I was just looking at booking a workshop for the first weekend in April, and I felt constriction in my body. If I actually think about it, I'm just flicking through on the calendar, like, well, we could do something right here. And it was just like, what, I didn't even notice it in that moment. Speaking it down, like, oh, that's like childhood issues. Yeah. That's a childhood trauma around my dad's instantaneous flip on the pendulum. And he would go back here to this rigidness, and it was just this stern strictness. And it would take time for it to kind of die down. So I would spend like 3 months going, is it okay to ask Dad something right now? Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? And then get a little bit of breathing room, and then he would be very soft on everything, and I'd be like, oh, now I'm back to Daddy's girl, and it's okay, and everything's fine, and then April would roll around. It was like that. But when we do that, what we do is I think we cause trauma to the people around us, because of that exact effect there, no matter what it is, and we do that in every subject area of our life.
Yeah, all our relationships. And I think that's interesting that you bring up like the trauma of like our childhood, because I think a lot of the times when we're little, our boundaries are not respected. Children's boundaries, children don't get the right to have boundaries in our current society.
And it's just,
it's like, no, give Auntie a hug.
That's where I was going. Like, no, give Auntie a hug. No, give me a kiss. No, if you want that, give me a kiss. What are we doing when we say that to our kids?
Your boundaries, consent.
If you want that chocolate milk, then you got to give me a hug. Yeah, and they're like, I
work very hard on that one, because I have lots of nieces and nephews, and like I'll go over to your kids is like my nephews, and I'll be like, come give Aunt Addison a hug, and they're like, no, and I try not to be like, I'll be like, please, and they're like, no, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, like,
right,
let it go.
Teaching that respect level of, I'm going to ask for what I want, but that does not necessarily mean
I'm going to get it.
That you're going to get it, and especially when it is dealing with like a physical boundary, of like a hug or
no, I get a bye poopy face.
yeah, that's their terms of endearment. They love you when they call you poopy face.
No, but I mean that's actually it is a beautiful example of like when we're little, our boundaries are not respected.
No, you need to say sorry to that person.
Yeah, even if you're not sorry.
It doesn't. I don't care if you're not sorry. You're going to go say sorry to that person, because that's the right thing to do. You're going to go say sorry to them. No, come here. We're saying sorry to them.
Or you're going to share. You're going to share your stuff. Like you don't get to have
a great big treasure trunk in my bedroom, and this is where my youngest two who have toys, right? They get to, before friends come over, if we know friends or family are coming over that have kids, I tell them, I'm like, go through your toys, and anything that you don't want to share, goes into the treasure trunk in mommy's room, because mommy's room is off limits to everybody anyway. This way, you know, anything that you want to keep special, you can have something special. You don't have to share everything. We should not have to share everything. Like, I'm a firm believer of, like, you don't have to freaking share everything. But if you have it out, then we're going to share it.
Yeah.
And if you pull it out of the box, then it's being shared.
Free reign.
It's free reign, right? Now we don't get to say, oh no, I'm going to take this out and you can't play with it. It gets put right there for the time frame that we have company over. But that at least gives that safety net of, like, no, I don't have to share everything. I get to choose what I share. I'm not going to ever force any of my kids to go, you must share this toy, you must do this, you must do that. It's like, no, go through what you want. So one day it's a stuffed animal, the next day it's their car, you know, the next day they're like, no, I'm sticking like 17 items in there, you know?
I'm not in a sharing mood.
I'm not in a sharing mood right there. They can play with that stuff over there. That's my brother's stuff. That's fine. like that. And you know, I'm like, but that's okay. That's respecting exactly where they're at and respecting their property, their special items, their personal space, all of that good stuff. And I think that, you know, just right down to like the forgiveness, the reason why we have such issues with, like, everybody knows that I have trouble with, like, if you say, I'm sorry, I'm ready to come out of my skin. Like, I do not do good with the word I'm sorry. I don't buy it. I'm like, that's bull bunk. You're not going to hear me say I'm sorry unless I'm being sarcastic or facetious or something really, like, there's moments. But if I say I'm sorry and I mean it, it's a big ticket item. And it's like something that really caught me off. If I'm just going, yeah, I'm so sorry. And then I'm like, I'm not sorry about that. Because the reality is that we have trained ourselves to say, I'm sorry for all this stuff that it's not our truth. Most people don't even want to say sorry. They're just trying to be a people pleaser in that moment. Mm-hmm. So then they're not standing in their truth. Then they're not even standing with their boundaries. They're not standing in anything that's them. And they're like, well, that's the way and then what? So we become a people pleaser. I say, I'm sorry for that. I don't really mean it. Then 3 years go down the road and I've repeatedly done this and the person's gone, well, you keep saying you're sorry, but you just keep redoing it over and over again. So you must not, I don't matter to you. I don't matter to you. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, you do. You matter to me. Our relationship matters to me. Well, if it mattered, then you would actually stick to your sorry. Oh, well, I wasn't really sorry about that because I didn't understand the importance it was to you. I didn't understand because probably it wasn't being communicated fully. We're just accepting apologies and giving apologies when they're not real. It's just, I'm a firm believer that the majority of the truth we speak is not even our truth. It is statements of people pleasing.
Okay.
Oh, she's going with it. She's like, I don't know.
Well, no, I think there is a lot. I think majority. Okay, I'll go with majority.
Say all.
Yeah, I think there are people who view sorry, like, I do say sorry a lot, but sometimes it's not like I'm sorry I did that action. It's like, I'm sorry you're feeling like that. Like, I don't like you feeling like this, right? Like, I don't like to see you upset. I don't like to see that, like, I created, like, some friction. Like, that doesn't make me happy. So I'm sorry for that piece of it. Maybe not the action, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there are levels of that. So we can do I think we've done a whole sorry. Because this is one that we have not completely different ideas, but, like, like, there's definitely some pieces there are differences between us.
Great.
But I think, like, a lot of our trauma actually, because we're forced to say sorry before, like, when we're little, like, we are traumatized into not having boundaries. Like, I grew up with 2 other siblings. I was the youngest child, and I was everyone's gopher. Like, I was not allowed to have boundaries, even if it's like, go get me juice, go get me this. Like, if I was like, no, I'm reading my book right now. I'm like, I don't want to go get you juice. It was like, no, go get, you know, so the word no was unaccepted. And so I think we create this trauma and we have to unlearn it as we get older. And most people don't want to go through that discomfort because it's not comfortable.
No.
To begin speaking their truth, begin practicing their boundaries, and then also realizing when, because there's also this rigidness too. We can have rigid boundaries. We go from one end to the other end of the spectrum with it, but we also can be set into rigid boundaries. We can go the opposite end, and instead of having really weak boundaries, we are consistently having rigid boundaries, and we don't know where to soften it all because we're afraid that any softening will create a world chaos. So there's a little bit of trust within self too that has to come in when we are dealing with boundaries and feeling into each situation, because like I have different boundaries with you than I have with my other best friend, than I have with another friend, that I have with my parents, that I have with my lover. Like boundaries are different, and so really feeling into each and every person and what you need from that person, what the boundaries are for that specific situation with that person. So
yeah, and then respecting after speaking, there's the respecting, because even if you can't, there are moments when we can't necessarily uphold somebody else's boundaries fully because of different things. You know, we might still have to go, no, I really do need you to do this. Like, I really do. Yeah. And that might really push somebody's boundary on that. But there needs to be then the speaking of, I understand that that's a boundary for you, but here's what's...
We need to renegotiate this.
Like how can we renegotiate this to make this, you know, a little bit easier for you to lean in here and for this still to happen, because this is like Max said, like important. You know, and that understanding of that. And then there is the realization that sometimes we speak our boundaries and somebody else is really just gonna plow right over them.
Yeah.
And not care. And that is them showing their true colors, in my opinion. I'm like, if you have stated it and stated it and stated it, I'm like, yep, somebody 3 tries. You know, like strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. Okay. On the 3rd one, it's like, okay, what are we not understanding?
Yeah.
You know, what are we not understanding here? Because if somebody just keeps plowing right over things and not listening, or just going, no, that's not what you really mean. That's not what you really mean. That's not what you really mean. No, this is what you mean. Now they're just controlling, not hearing.
Yeah. And I think you can also feel, like, I know when I set a boundary with somebody, you get, and you can see if somebody's trying to uphold a boundary and they're struggling, they're learning, they're in that process of like, oh, I messed up again, I stepped over there, but they're making an effort. You can see people who are like, I hear you, I'm trying, I'm working on this, I'm gonna mess it up, I think like you also can't expect perfection in people when you've just set a boundary. If you're not used to setting boundaries and you set a boundary, and if everyone doesn't fall in line to that boundary automatically, I think like, again, I'm thinking of a client, like, then the fact is like you have to give people time to learn and mess up and go, okay, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I didn't realize that I messed up. But you can see when somebody's wholeheartedly like trying, like, how can I support this boundary? How can I step up? How can I do this? So there is a coming at it from more of a place of love too, of like, okay, like I see you're making effort. We're gonna continue to make effort. We're gonna continue to tweak this, but like, I'm not gonna blow up at you just because this happened. Like, I see that you made some effort, and I think like, especially like in romantic relationships, when like dynamics are changing and things like that in a relationship, you can definitely see that process unfolding, and it is coming from a heart place. So yes. Well, I know we have a boundary because you have a client coming in, so we're a little late, so I want to uphold our client's boundaries of time.
So what do you have going on? I promoted your...
I know, my Aphrodite circles tomorrow here.
Oh, and one of my clients is coming in to remind me to tell you to write her name down.
Awesome. We're going to have a packed group. It's going to be amazing. I have this week, so I have the Aphrodite circles, which you haven't heard about that, go to absentbelle.net, check it out. There's actually only a few more spots left, and then we probably are like cut off. But then I also have my solo tantra, so if you are not in the DFW area or in the DFW area and you just want to learn about Tantra online, this is a jam-packed course. It starts Wednesday. Get your butt on the list. This is a beautiful course to ask all the questions, to get all the answers. You have me live. You have me there to help guide you through. So people are always like, oh yeah, I'll get the recording. Yeah, but then you don't get me live. You don't get the group interaction as much. This is an amazing course. It has like 20 some odd PDFs in it. Like I went a little crazy when I first created this content. But that is happening Wednesday, so get on the list, addisonbill.net. It's on my front page right now, so go check that out.
Awesome.
You have an amazing thing.
Yeah, well, Saturday I have the women's body mapping, Empowering Bitch coming up. So that is that's a small group event here in Plano that we're going to be doing. And that is, I love body mapping because it really is an embodiment process and how we pull all of the different aspects of ourselves together. And this is definitely a female empowerment body mapping that we will be doing. Everything else in my world has actually shifted and you don't even know about it because it happened right before I got here. So I can't even market some things because I'm like, well, I think that things are moving on me and I just kind of went boo, boo, boo. But with that said,
you've got lots of events coming up.
I have lots of events coming up and I was going to do this event called Pathways to Relationships. And February is relationship month. I mean, it's all the month of love, right? Where we pay for too much for our flowers and our chocolate and our wine. Yeah, that month that is coming up in just a couple weeks. So I was actually going to do Pathways to Relationships in the month of January, but I'm going to be moving it to, people just need to stop calling me for a second, you know?
Your desire.
I know. It's like, stop today. I texted everybody like, I have stuff that I'm doing. I will respond. Text me. So Pathways to Relationships, it is going to be, I think I'm going to do it local and online. So that is going to be coming out for early February for both of those to be viewed and signed up for. My focus on that is all of the stuff that we're actually talking about. You know, it is. We're going to be talking about boundaries. We're going to be talking about intimacy. We're going to be talking about communication. We're going to be talking about what love is and what love is not. You know, some of the most important key factors in relationship. What NRE is, new relationship energy. All of that good stuff.
We love new relationship energy.
All of that stuff right there. My goodness.
I'm gonna swipe right.
Yeah. So that will be coming out, and my goal is to have a small group, but also to make an offering for the global community because I think that it's a powerful topic, especially in the month of February when we have all these expectations around love and romance
and ideas of what love really is. And
yeah, we romanticize it and think, oh, it's like Hollywood this and Hollywood like that. But a lot of what
that's new relationship.
It's new relationship. But even if you think about it, a lot of that is obsessive love.
Yeah,
and it's not healthy love.
It's not healthy.
So we're going to be
talking true love.
All of that. Pathways to Relationships should be a really fun workshop. So look for that to come out. You can always go to www.kendallwilliams.com, click on my events, and yeah, once I get all my shiz straightened out, my reorganizing that is going to occur later today.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us on Free Spirit Talks. We will see you in a few weeks for another chit chat. Yes. So, all right, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.